So this is the other half of my garden, and following with the low maintenance theme, I thought I would try a series of crops I'd heard a lot about in the past, but never had actually gotten around to growing. And it's a traditional, again, companion planted variety or combination that the Native Americans have been growing for thousands of years. It's called the Three Sisters, and there's a legend and a story that goes with it that I'm not familiar with, but the gardening practical hands-on aspect is that there are three crops that grow together and complement one another. And as you can see, sprouting here is the first of the Three Sisters, which is corn. And the corn you plant a little earlier, and then when it's about 3 or 4 inches tall, you plant the two other sisters, which are beans and squash. And the beans climb the corn like a trellis, and then the squash vines out over the ground with its big leaves and shades out all the weeds. So once this is established, it should be very low maintenance. I should just be able to come out, watch it, look at it, observe that it is in fact growing, and that'll be awesome. So in preparation for planting this, I have a large square here that I double dug, again adding compost at the subsoil level and then more on top, just because I felt the compost was available, and I know the corn is a very heavy feeder, and particularly it takes a lot of nitrogen from the soil. And that's another aspect of the companion planting of this, is that the beans are legumes and they fix nitrogen into the soil, which won't be available to this corn, but if I were to be growing it many years in a row, I would be able to do that without depleting the soil, because the beans would be replenishing the nitrogen into the soil. So I double dug the whole bed, and then, as you guys know, for a long time it was just sitting here with a big blue tarp over it, mostly because I felt like it was a big task and I didn't sort of take it on in chunks the way I could have. But the other day, last week, I was just like, it's time, I'm going to do this. I had a couple hours consecutively, so I peeled the tarp back, and the soil was really great. Like, it was nice and dark, it had a lot of moisture that was in it, and there were no weeds. So I felt that that sort of stale bedding tarp mulch method was really effective. I was very pleased with how that worked out. And I just sort of tossed the surface around with a bit with a hoe to get there. I mean, there were a couple tiny little sprouts here and there, like nothing major, so I tossed them around. And then the idea came to me a little while earlier that rather than just plant it all in one big chunk, I could, again, like I did with the two smaller gardens, do two Three Sisters gardens, planted in different ways, and observe their growing habits and see if I get a different yield. So the one you're looking at is the second one I planted, and with that I'm doing it all by direct seeding. So as you can see, the terrain is very uneven. That's from when I dug out the pathway between the beds. I just sort of tossed it on here and thought, you know what, that's good enough. It's supposed to be a little hilled, a little mounded. The corn won't mind, so I may as well just plant right into that and see how it goes. So there's compost on the top as well, a little bit that's still around. I basically just rummaged through our box of old seed and found a corn variety that I liked, that looked nice. That was also a quick maturing variety, because I'm planting a little late here. And I brought it out here, took a handful and just scattered it over, and then I thought, you know, this is old seed, I don't know how well it's going to germinate, so then I threw about like 4 more handfuls on. So there was just a ton of corn seed, and then I just went through and poked them down into the soil with my finger, covered them up a little bit, and as you can see, they're actually germinating quite well. I'm going to have to come through here. I think I'll wait another week until all of it has popped up, and I'm going to actually have to come through and thin in a couple spots, because the corn doesn't like to be planted that close. It needs a bit more space than what I've given it here. So when the corns are about 4 inches tall, like I said, I'll plant the beans quite close to them, so they can use the corn as a trellis, and then sort of scattered out. I think I'll be able to fit 4 or 5 squash plants in this bed maybe, and I'll try and space them so that when they're at their full size, they'll be covering the whole bed with their leaves. And then in the other bed, which we'll show in a minute, I used some transplants, and so the corns had a much bigger head start than this direct seeded variety, and I'll be able to see the difference in that regard. Yes, Mr. Cordy.
That was just
I see.
a fake thing.
I thought you had a question.
I thought you did too.
I was mistaken.
That was really good. Can we stop and have a question session? Because I got a couple of